Welcome, fellow bookworms, to Tibra's Den. My name is Whitney, and today I have two books we are going to be talking about. One I feel is a little bit underhyped. I would love to see a lot more of it here on Booktube. And the other one is a little bit overhyped in my mind. But we are going to be talking about My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. I'll be talking about this one second, just because there are trigger warnings for this one, and because of that, I'm going to do it last. So that way, if you just want to hear about Daughter of the Moon Goddess and this is going to be too triggering for you, you can jump off. Although this one has such an important narrative and so many important conversations can be brought up based on this book. So really excited to talk about this one. I mean, an amazing book. If it's not going to be too triggering for you, or at some point when you're in a better space and you're able to read it, I definitely would pick this one up. But look at the trigger warnings before you jump in. The other one is Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sue Lynn Tan. This one was still really, really good. Like, don't get me wrong. There's just a lot of things that I didn't particularly enjoy about it. And I don't think it deserves the hype that has gotten. When a book is this hype, like, I expect a solid 5-star read. I expect it to be amazing. And it fell a little short of that for me, even though it's still a really, really good read. So we'll talk about this one first, but of course, before I do, if you could go ahead and remember to give this video a like, it does help out the channel, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you don't miss out on a thing. So let's talk about the premise of this, just in case you live under a rock and you haven't heard about it. So this one is based on the Chinese moon goddess Chang'e, and it follows her daughter. Like, that's Daughter of the Moon Goddess. Pretty self-explanatory there. But Chang'e has been banished to the moon by the celestial emperor, and they don't know about her daughter, and so she's kind of kept Xinyan's like magic contained a little bit, and when her magic kind of gets set off, it creates a disturbance, and so she ends up having to flee to avoid discovery, and she ends up in the celestial kingdom, even though that wasn't the original plan. And she starts off as kind of a servant, but catches the eye of the prince, so a little bit of like Cinderella vibes sprinkled in there. And she ends up becoming his companion, so she learns alongside him and um trains with him as far as like battle and such. And so, yeah, that's kind of the premise. And the whole time, the whole plot is she's trying to figure out a way that she can free her mother. And there's a specific thing that's very rare, but she ends up setting her sights on that to see if she can try to obtain this thing so that way she can free her mom. But she forms a really close friendship with the prince, but the empress does not like her, hasn't liked her from the beginning, and the emperor is kind of cold and just not not a nice guy at all either. So, and so it kind of goes through, and it has years pass, like she's companion for years, and then she kind of goes into the army and she's training for years and battling for years. So years pass in this timeline. Of course, they're immortal, so the pacing of this book is really, really fast because it has to cover years at a time. um but yeah, the ultimate goal is just to free her mother and try to find a way to do that. And of course, romantic feelings develop, as always, and there's a little bit of a love triangle in here as well. So I'm going to talk about my CAWPILE rating. Again, if you're interested in the CAWPILE rating system, the original creator is linked down below, so you can go check out her channel, and see what it's all about. But the characters for this book, I gave a 9. They were really solid. I really did enjoy them, especially the main character, Xingyan. I really, really enjoyed them. But there's just some choices that were made that didn't feel really true to the characters. It felt more done to add to the drama, and it was just more convenient than fit the characters. And so, that kind of dropped it down. There were some characters that weren't as developed. Like, yes, they were side characters, but I would have liked to see them a little bit more developed, for sure. So, atmosphere, I did give a 10 though. Like, the atmosphere was chef's kiss. Like, I loved it. And they ride like clouds, like there's this whole cloud thing, which I really enjoyed in particular because when I was a kid, I was convinced there were cities up in the clouds, and I wanted to go up in the clouds and I wanted to see these cities. I was fully convinced. I also thought you could like cut a hole in the TV and go into whatever show you were watching. So I was kind of a weird kid, but I really liked that cloud aspect. And there's kind of like this elemental magic aspect, which I enjoyed as well. There's dragons in this book. So the atmosphere was absolutely wonderful. Really, really enjoyed that. Writing, I gave an 8. Again, there was just some things that felt a little forced that were done for dramatic effect versus being like true to the character or really fitting in the storyline. Um, and so yeah, I just that part dropped it down a little bit for me. Even though it was still very well written, like 8's solid, it was didn't quite hit the mark for me. Plot, I also gave it 8. Again, there was just things that happened that did not feel like legitimate. Like, I get that it's kind of fantasy and such, but it didn't feel true to the characters and it didn't feel natural to the plot line. It felt forced. And there's a kind of this twist that happens that I did not like. Like, the twist was fine, but who was involved in the twist, I did not agree with. I think there's another character that was a much better choice for that. And again, that was one of the characters that wasn't really developed and such. And you didn't get more information on. But I thought, based on what information we did have, that was the better choice and would have felt more natural than the choice that did happen. So I did not enjoy that. Intrigue also dropped down a little bit. It's an 8 as well. And again, it was just the things that were happening and the time that passed, and she got off a little she got a little off track with the whole romance aspect. Like, that ended up taking the forefront kind of in the middle of the book versus her goal and her plot line. It did kind of play in a little bit, to the drama again, but I don't know, it just felt off track. I did not think the romance was necessary. I liked like the secondary romance that kind of formed the love triangle, but the romance between her and the prince, one, it was really short lived. Like, the pacing of this book is really fast, so it was short lived, and I don't know, I just did not enjoy that. It felt forced, honestly. So, intrigue got a little lost during that time because I was just like, I just wanted to get to the point, honestly. And logic, I gave a 7. Again, just the things that happened, like, it felt more forced than natural, like, to the characters and to the plot line. And how things kind of worked out in the end. Like, the final part was really cool. I really enjoyed that. But the part before that, where you think she's kind of going to succeed and she doesn't, that part felt a little too easy to me. Like, it's supposed to be this rare thing that they can obtain, but it just felt like she got it a little bit too easy. So that's why Logic only got a 7. Enjoyment, though, I did give it a 9. Overall, I did enjoy the book. Like, it was a solid read. It was easy to read, with the pacing and everything like that. It's just those little issues. I could not give it a 10 just because there's things I would have done completely different. But yeah, so average rating is 8.42, which is 4 stars. Like I said, a good solid read. It's just, with as hyped as it was, I was going in expecting a 5-star read. I was expecting it to be absolutely amazing. And I honestly enjoyed The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie more than The Daughter of the Moon Goddess. And it probably wasn't fair to read them in the same month. But I was really excited about both of them. But I kept comparing it to things in Daughter of the Moon Goddess, and I also read the Tiger Curse Saga by Colleen Houck. I read the first 3 books, and there's dragons in the 3rd book, Tiger's Voyage, and I don't know, I kept there's also 2 more in that series plus a little novella, and I kept thinking about those books because I really wanna finish that series, but obviously I had some other books I needed to prioritize. And so I just kind of kept drifting towards those books and wishing I was reading those books during the part where it was kind of more about the love triangle and such. That's kind of where my attention kept drifting. So I kept comparing it to those, like Tiger's Curse Saga and The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. But like I said, with all the hype, I was expecting this one to be my favorite. Like I was expecting to absolutely love it, and it just wasn't the case. So, um, yeah, still very, very solid. Like I would still recommend it. Like it's very enjoyable, but I don't think it deserves the hype that it has gotten. Um, it's solid, it's good. I'm going to be picking up the duology when it comes out in November for sure. I forget what it's called, but I'll insert a picture here, of course. But yeah, a good solid read, just didn't quite live up to the hype for me. And there's all those little things that I think could have been different and would have made the story a lot better. Like I said, the love triangle thing. I enjoyed the second half of the love triangle, like really enjoyed that. It felt more natural and everything like that. The triangle with the prince though, that whole love situation, like I said, it felt like it was for the drama and it detracted from the um the story, honestly. And then, like I said, how easy it was for her to obtain this rare thing, especially when the Emperor and the Empress don't like her. Especially the Empress, but the Emperor, just the way he was presented, it didn't feel natural that he would do that. Like I said, that twist, I think there was a better candidate for the twist than the one that was chosen. So overall, pretty solid, but just let me down a little bit. So let's go ahead and talk about My Dark Vanessa now. So, trigger warnings, there's grooming, there is unwanted sexual interaction. Um, and so, yeah, very heavy topic, and it really does a deep dive into it. But I think the narrative of this book is so important, especially all the people like the higher ups that let Vanessa down. Um Very, very important conversation. Also with what's going on currently with Roe versus Wade and such. Like I don't want to get too much into that. And it didn't play a part in this book, but it could have. And so there's a line that's easily drawn from here to that. And she does kind of talk a little bit, not a little bit, like politics are kind of present in this. And so that could open up a conversation to what's going on as well, and it all ties in together, honestly, in my mind. Like women are not taken seriously. Men have more rights than women do, and it's just this book opens up such an important area. Like I said, it's definitely very triggering, especially if you've experienced any form of this. It's very triggering, but like I said, it's an important narrative. This is a book to buddy read or read with a group and have a conversation about for sure if you can handle it. Like I said, definitely like hard and heavy to read, but so important at the same time. So basically the premise is you have Vanessa, and when she was 15 she was groomed and was having an affair with one of the teachers, and then later on, like I think it's 17 years later, so she's 32 now, somebody is kind of during the Me Too movement and people are calling out all these predators and such, and there's a girl who reaches out to her because nobody believes her, And so she's trying to get Vanessa to share her story and call out the same man that assaulted her. And that way, he can be brought to justice essentially. But Vanessa doesn't feel like she was a victim. Like she thinks that she went into it willingly. Which even if she had, um, she was still groomed. So, but yeah, it's so hard to read and you just want to jump in there. And it's hard because you feel for the teenage Vanessa. It kind of goes back and forth. And you feel for the teenage Vanessa, but the adult Vanessa, you're like, what is wrong with you? Like, she maintains a conversation and a connection to her abuser well into adulthood. Why this is going on, she's still in contact with him and she's still trying to protect him. And you get so frustrated at her, but then later on, because she's in therapy and such, but her therapist, she's never touched on that with her therapist. And later on, with all this coming to light, she ends up touching on it. And then you kind of understand why. Why she's still protecting this man and such. So, very, very heavy. This one, 6 out of 5 stars. Like, I mean, I cannot say enough good things. And I think if I remember, I was reading the acknowledgement, this took her like 18 years to write. So it's no wonder that it was really, really well done. I mean, it's just like absolutely amazing. But I remember I was kind of reading the acknowledgments. Yeah, so it says, thank you to my internet pals who have always been my first readers, who supported and encouraged me over the 18 years I worked on My Dark Vanessa. So it wasn't something that she just sat down and wrote out. Like, she put a lot of time and thought into this book, which really, really shows. Like I said, there's nothing. The only thing I didn't like is there is kind of a little bit of political conversation. It was during the time, like, Bush versus Gore and such. And so there is a little bit of political narrative, not super heavy. And the way she worked it in worked well for the story. It's just something that I felt the story could have done without. But honestly, in the context of things, uh, and bringing up important conversations, I think the political aspect honestly actually does work, even though if it wasn't my favorite, it definitely works. So yeah, 18 years she spent on this book, and it definitely shows. And I marked only 4 pages because overall, like, just reading the story, just the narrative over and over again. But yeah, she's goes to this boarding school, and her English teacher kind of ends up targeting her, and grooms her, and then it advances to sexual relations. And in her mind, she was a willing participant, and so she wasn't a victim like the other ones. But at the same time, later on, when she's having a conversation with the girl who's trying to get her to speak out, she's like kind of comparing their encounters with this man, because he never took it to the next level with these other girls that he did with Vanessa. He would bring her to his house and sleep with her and such, but she never felt like she was the R word. We all know that word, because she was willing, even though there's 3 separate times where it's clear that she did not consent and that she did not want it. Like, she's talking about being in a separate place, like imagining herself somewhere else. Especially the first time, like, she's uncomfortable and she's trying to get out of it, and she mentions that she doesn't want to get pregnant because she's thinking, oh well, that will back him off, and it doesn't. And so, um little bit of a spoiler, but he had a vasectomy, so he couldn't get anybody pregnant. Obviously, he didn't want that fallout, but yeah, but it doesn't make him back off. Um, and so she doesn't know what to do because she doesn't want this, and she wasn't. He told her that they wouldn't go. He did some other stuff to her and told her they wouldn't go farther than that night, and then he ends up going there anyway, even though she doesn't want to, and she's crying, and he's just going. So, she definitely was, but in her mind, she wasn't. Like I said, you're so angry at the adult Vanessa, like you feel for the girl Vanessa and what she's going through and her confusion and such. But the denial of the adult Vanessa, it's just like you just want to reach into the book and shake her. And she has people in her life, like it ruins her relationships. Like she had a relationship with this guy, but because of what happened, like her refusal to go to a therapist or address this in any way, and her contact with him, he ends up moving on, and so it ruins that potential relationship, which is a shame as well. But she's just in denial. And so I marked 4 pages, which we're going to talk about. Again, a little bit, maybe of spoilers here, but um, nothing too major because you know what it's about going in. So this first time, she's kind of thinking about, whether she's a victim or not, whether she can claim that. And so she puts, not that, mm-mm. Strain hurt me sometimes, but never like that. Though I could claim me, and I'm sure I'd be believed, I could participate in this movement of women upon women upon women, lining the walls with every bad thing that's ever happened to them. But I'm not going to lie to fit in. I'm not going to call myself a victim. And it's like, you were, though. You were a victim. And these women, like, she's almost disdainful towards those women. And so that's why, like I said, the adult Vanessa, you're just like, you don't understand where she's coming from and why until later in the book. And one thing I think this kind of hit closer to home for me, because I was around the same age, like during the time frame this is going on. I was around the same age. I was a couple years younger than Vanessa, but like it says on this one, so she's like, on the third week, the Twin Towers fall, and all day at school we watch the news. Miniature American flags start appearing on cars, pinned to people's jackets, in convenience stores next to the cash registers. Fox News plays on the TV in the cafeteria, and every evening my parents watch hours of CNN. The same shots of the smoke billowing from the towers. George W. with a megaphone at ground zero. Pundits speculating about where the anthrax letters are coming from. So, just where the time period was, like I was in ninth grade when the Twin Towers, happened, when 9/11 happened. And so I think that kind of affected me a little bit as well, because I was around that same age during the same time period. So all those little references, like I could really connect to that teenage Vanessa, even though I would have been able to anyway. It just hit a little closer because I was a teenager at the exact same time she was. And obviously this is a fictional character. Um and this next one is she's talking to her therapist, and they're kind of having a conversation. And so her therapist, is obviously trying to tread a little carefully. And she goes, honestly, Vanessa, what I'm hearing is that he was a very weak man, and even as a girl, you knew you were stronger than him. You knew he couldn't handle being exposed, and that's why you took the fall. You're still trying to protect him. Um, and so, yeah, she's, like I said, she protected him as a girl so he didn't get into trouble, and she's continuing to protect him now as an adult, which you just, like, say, you don't really understand. Um, and so then this next time one is she's again talking to her therapist, and she's kind of, again, just justifying things and trying to protect him. And so her therapist says, Vanessa, listen to yourself. I could have stopped him. Okay, she says. Even if you could have stopped him, it wasn't your responsibility, and it wouldn't have changed anything for you, because stopping him wouldn't have changed the fact that you were abused. I wasn't abused, Vanessa. No, listen to me. Don't act like I don't know what I'm saying. He never forced me, okay? But he did. 3 separate times within the book, there's instances where she was forced, okay? He made sure I said yes to everything, especially when I was younger. Again, grooming. He was careful, he was good, he loved me. I say that over and over and over again, a refrain that turns meaningless so quick. He loved me, he loved me. And so then she kind of goes on and she says, she kind of breaks down a little bit and she says, I just really need it to be a love story, you know. I really, really need it to be that. Because if it isn't a love story, then what is it? And so it was, in the end, you realize that she was still protecting him and she was still justifying everything because she was protecting herself. Like, if she admitted that she was groomed and she was a victim and that she was, then she was abused, she was a victim. And so if she pretended it was a love story, that it was her choice, then she could pretend that she didn't experience that abuse. So it was really a way of her to protect herself. So, like I said, very, very heavy read, very emotional. Especially as women, I think we all can recall instances um, of older men or men in general. And yeah, I think this is, like I said, this is a book you need to read, buddy read with a group, something, and have a conversation about. Is it going to be an easy conversation? Absolutely not. But it's an important narrative and it's something that as women we need to talk about. Um, it does go like further than that. Like I said, it bleeds into what's currently going on with Roe versus Wade and everything like that. Like, an important narrative for sure. Triggering as F, but important nonetheless. So this one got tens all across the board. Like I said, if I could give it 6 stars out of 5, I would, because this book, like, it was so well done. And like I said, she took 18 years to write it. It's not something she just wrote on a whim. Like, she took her time. There's a lot of thought that went into this, and it is so, so well done. So if you can, read this, talk about it, get together with friends and read it, buddy read, group, whatever, but talk about this book for sure if you can. Like I said, I know a lot of us have dealt with some form of that, and so if it's not going to be too triggering for you, obviously if it is, you need to take care of yourself first. But very, very important narrative to be had around this book, and this is a book I would love to see talked about a lot more for sure. So that's all I got today. I'm gonna go ahead and leave you guys here on that kind of dark note. But yeah, my wrap up video should be coming out tomorrow. I have one more book I need to try to squeeze in, and which I should be able to easily do today. And then my July TBR video will be coming out the next day. So definitely, like I said, if you're not subscribed, please do so and hit the bell notification. And that's all I got. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.